to this week's live weekly warm-up. This is the last of our three-part series, sort of going over the basics and returning to what we really want to be getting out of every single warm-up exercise that we do. 2 weeks ago, we talked about long tones. Last week, we talked about technique. And this week, we are talking about articulation, which if you know and have been following Quick Start Clarinet, then you know that covers the three-step warm-up. So this is the last of the back to basics. But I also wanted to include some extra information about sort of why we do warm-ups and the importance of them. I've made some videos about this in the past, and even these like back to basics things, I think I somewhat explained in the first live weekly warm-ups, but that's been over a year ago, almost getting up towards a year and a half already. It's crazy how time is flying. So I think it's always good to have a refresher on these things and to make sure that you're always thinking about these and being really conscientious of sort of what you're getting out of practicing. Because if you just go into the practice room and just do the same thing, running through the motions and not actually consciously thinking about it and being deliberate about what you want to improve and focus on, then you're not going to get that much better. You're just going to be doing the same thing over and over. So starting with articulation today, the important thing with articulation is to be maintaining the sound quality from the long tones. The way that I think of the whole three-step warm-up is that we start with the long tones to shape the sound. Then we move into the technique, which is moving our fingers and being really precise with our finger motion while maintaining that good sound. And then finally, articulation is actually shaping notes and getting articulation and note shapes out of that really great, good sound. So the first most important thing is to get that good sound and then make sure that your tongue motion doesn't affect that good sound. And that's the trap that everybody falls into, and I think is the most important thing to be thinking about when you're doing any articulation exercise, is that you're keeping your air and your embouchure 100% steady, just as if it's a long tone, and allowing your tongue to be 100% independent, touching the reed, shaping the notes. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to play just the super simple scale articulation, and I'm just going to stick with the same 5 notes that we did for the long tones and the technique the past 2 weeks, which is just C just below the staff, up to open G, and back down. And on those 5 notes, what I'm going to do is start by holding a long tone, because that's what we need to be shaping the sound out of. We need to get that sound going, so then we can use our tongue to chop it up. And then I'm just going to articulate 4 notes per pitch in a very simple scale articulation way. So let me demonstrate that before my reed dries out too much, and then I'll talk more about what we need to be getting out of it and what to be getting out of all your warm-ups. So hopefully you noticed as you're watching me do that my embouchure was totally steady. You could hear the articulated notes, and that was my tongue touching the reed, but nothing else was getting involved. If I turn to the side, you can see that even my chin is hopefully 100% steady. No extra movement at all. And this actually takes quite a bit of practice, because as we start moving our tongue, it's very natural for our lips to start moving or our jaw to start moving. Because if you think about it, in our normal day-to-day life, there's nothing that we do where our tongue moves while our jaw or lips don't move, unless you're I can't really think of anything. Leave a comment if you can think of something where really, truly just your tongue moves and everything else stays totally stationary. The other thing that's true is with our air as well. Our air always moves when our tongue's moving. Probably not when we're chewing, so that's like one example where our tongue might be moving, but our air isn't really doing anything. Although you still breathe while you chew as well, so that's affecting things. But talking, especially, every single syllable is a little puff of air or a little change in air pressure to create the different sounds that we make. But on the clarinet, we don't want that changing air pressure. So I'm actually going to do a little bit of the scale articulation again. And this time I'm going to intentionally leak so you can hear my air. And hopefully you can hear sort of how that's going with complete, steady, continued support of the air. Hopefully you can hear that over the computer with the air sound and the actual tone, and hear that the air is completely continuous, totally steady along while my tongue is doing the work of separating the notes. And that brings us to sort of the final thing to be thinking about with the articulation. You may find it funny that we're talking about articulation, and so far I haven't really mentioned the tongue at all. All I've said is that we need to focus on the air and embouchure being steady, and I think that's true. Whenever you're doing an articulation exercise, start with the air and embouchure, make sure that's continuous and supportive, because if the air is not there to create the sound and get the reed vibrating, it doesn't matter how perfect your embouchure is or how perfect the tongue motion is, the sound's not going to be good. Same thing if your tongue motion is absolutely flawless, the most light, minimal motion ever, but you're clamping down with your embouchure or changing your embouchure, then the sound's not going to be good. So we do the long tones to get the air and embouchure rock solid, and then we can shape notes out of that with our tongue. Now, speaking of the tongue, the goal on articulation exercises is to be as consistent as possible. There's all kinds of things, and I think this would be a topic for a more in-depth video about like tip of the tongue touching the tip of the reed, how much pressure, all the other voicing things. But at the end of the day, the goal is consistent sound. So if you find yourself getting inconsistent articulation, like anything weird like that, the first place to look is your air and embouchure, making sure that they're truly steady and not impacting the sound. And then the second thing to look at is your tongue motion, making sure it's actually consistent, where you're touching the reed in the same spot every time, you're touching it with the same pressure every time, and coming away to the same spot. Just like our fingers in the technique stuff is on, off, and really only has those two positions. Same thing with our tongue. It's just the tip of the tongue is either touching the reed, stopping the vibrations, or off of the reed, allowing the reed to vibrate. And that is pretty much everything you need to think about on the articulation, whether it's super legato like I was doing or super staccato. Still continuous air, as you can hear, still steady embouchure. The only thing that changes is how long the tongue's on the reed. Not more pressure, not more motion, not hitting a different spot of the reed. Everything's exactly the same. It's just consistently on, off, on, off. So I hope that helps clear up some things about articulation and what to be focusing on. As I continue to do the live weekly warm-up and go over different exercises, I hope you continue to think about these back to basics videos, not just for articulation, but also for the technique and the long tones, so that you're always conscientious of what kind of exercise is this? Is it a long tone, a technique, or an articulation? And given that, what do you need to be getting out of it? Is it sound quality? Is it great finger motion while maintaining sound quality? Or great consistent tongue motion and consistent note shape while maintaining sound quality? So I hope that's helpful. I hope that you have some more ideas and more deliberate things to get out of your practicing, so you're not just doing the same exercises over and over, getting bored of them, but you're actually getting better at playing the clarinet because you're working on this consistency and raising the quality of everything as you play. So if you have any questions about any of these sort of back to basics things and things that you should be focusing on each of these exercises, let me know in the comments below. If you have a warm-up exercise and you're not sure how it cleanly fits into long tones, technique, or articulation, let me know in the comments below, and I will certainly do a video on it probably and talk about how to get the most out of it. I always love seeing different people's warm-up routines and different warm-up exercises that people like to do. So if you have any warm-up exercises that you like that I haven't talked about before, or even that I have talked about before and you would like another refresher on, let me know in the comments below. And I look forward to another year or more of fun weekly warm-ups, giving you guys the things to work on, the exercises to focus on each week that will hopefully make a difference in your clarinet playing journey. So thank you so much for watching this. I also want to mention one other really quick thing before we go, especially for the people who are watching on YouTube. But if you're on Facebook, this can apply as well. I'm doing a little fun end of the year sort of subscriber drive where I'm trying to reach a goal of 750 subscribers by the end of the year. As of right now, I think I'm at like 615 or so. So it's a ways to go and we don't have too much time before the end of the year. So it would mean the world to me if you go and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Right now, about 80% of viewers are not subscribers currently. So if you're one of those 80% who are watching this who aren't subscribed, hit the red button, subscribe to the channel. And if you have anybody you know who would be interested in videos like this and my regular sort of Saturday tips and tricks videos, I would love for you to share this with them and invite them to join the channel so we can hit that 750 subscriber goal by the end of the year, which I think is definitely doable. So thanks so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in another video, and I look forward to seeing you next week for the next live weekly warm-up, now freshly armed with all of these good basics that you want to be getting out of all of these different exercises. So have a great day, a great week, and I'll see you next week.